my presentation is on purpose-driven manufacturing. I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself before I get started. I'm a chemical engineer. That's why I didn't get involved in that over there. That's electrical. But I started my career working for a major corporation, so I learned a lot of really great practices that corporations follow. And then I left and I started my own company, and I worked as an independent consultant for a while, and then I started West Coast Environmental and Engineering. So I know what it's like to have a small company and to, be dealing with limited resources and limited budget. But so as I talk today, I'm going to be giving you the perspective, both from a small company, but it's also looking forward to, who do you want to be? You don't want to be a small company necessarily forever. And if you're competing with these major corporations, then you want to be developing programs that are at least, on a par with them, maybe not to the same extent, but you have to be considering some of the same things. So I'll talk about that a little bit and how to size things for you. When I first started out, my first major client was a manufacturer, and they called me in because they had to meet wastewater discharge regulations, and they needed a wastewater treatment system. Now, I could have just come in and helped design a wastewater treatment system for the company, but I said, well, before we do that, let's take a look at how you're using water, and then we'll see if we can reduce the amount of water you're using and see what the best way is to approach this. So we went and we characterized how they were using water throughout this facility. And we did it, not just me, but I did it with the people who worked in the facility. And that's really important, is to get people involved that actually are doing the work, because they have wonderful ideas and they also carry on once you're gone. But anyway, so we went and we looked, and we found that in one instance they were taking parts after they heat treated them, and they were quenching them in this big vat of water, 25,000 gallons. They would quench the parts and discharge the water. And it was, so it was like simple things like that, when you start to characterize, the solutions start just popping out left and right. It's really kind of crazy. So they put in a heat exchanger and kept reusing that water. So all these things. Anyway, we were able to save them 70% of the water that they were using. And we were able to reduce the size of the wastewater treatment system by 50%. So they saved money on the water they were buying, they saved money on the water they were discharging, and they saved money on their wastewater treatment system. So that kind of shows you how sustainability really can work for you. And so what is sustainability? Well, this is my definition of sustainability, and it comes from that experience. To me, it's a systems-based approach. You don't just look at one piece of the problem, you look at the whole system, because your solutions not only come from the system, but they also need to integrate with the system. And that's the next thing. You want to integrate your solutions into your systems that are there. And you also want to, when you do that, your solutions can result in co-benefits instead of side effects, and you want to minimize then your negative impacts. So there are three components to sustainability that everybody is probably pretty familiar with: economy, environment, and equity. Environment and equity get a lot of discussion, but economy is really important, because without economic sustainability, we don't have the engine for environmental and social equity sustainability. And the economic side of it is, I think, actually a good way to understand the importance of environmental and social equity. If you ran your business at a loss, eventually you would go bankrupt. And that's the same with the environment. If we run our environment at a loss, eventually we're going to go bankrupt, and the same with social equity. We always have to keep in mind that our employees, our suppliers' employees, are also our customers. And so we want to have a healthy customer base as well, and so keep those things in mind. There have been many, many studies done on the business case for sustainability. I'm going to grab my notes here real quick. And I wanted to just highlight two of these. And those are, sorry about that. Deloitte did a survey of over 6,000 retail shoppers, and they found that green consumers shop more frequently, they purchase more per trip, and they're less price sensitive than the average shopper. And I think a lot of people found that you can charge a premium for sustainable products. Green shoppers, they tend to become loyal to green products once they tried them. And sustainability considerations drive or influence the buying decisions of more than half the shoppers interviewed. And this is an older study, and I'm sure today that's even higher. A Harvard Business School study also concluded that high sustainability companies outperformed other companies both in their long-term terms of market performance and financial performance. So I think that a lot's been done to show that sustainability does really pay. So getting started, you decided you wanted to put together a sustainability program. You probably have a lot of things in place, but you want to maybe formalize it. The first thing you want to do is find your fit. Sustainability is a spectrum, and not everybody is going to be at the same place on that spectrum. So I've kind of put this together. You can start off with the simple, low-cost solutions, and then the next stage in sustainability is really doing some assessment and analysis, like I was talking about at the beginning, and putting together a plan. From there, you may end up putting in a more comprehensive plan and program so that you're integrating it into your operations on all levels. And then the next is looking at your product line. And actually, some people may be looking at their product line first or in parallel with this. But looking at your product line and how sustainable is your product, that's one thing. But the other side of sustainability is you can also look at your product line and say, what are the gaps out there? Where can I develop a new product that is sustainable and that I can sell to that sustainability market? So it's a whole new market, and as I said before, you can also charge a premium in that market. So that's another sort of avenue of consideration. And then, at the highest level, when we look at some of these, I guess, sort of role models for sustainability, like Patagonia and companies like that those companies, they're looking at both internal and external programs. So they're not just looking at making their own companies sustainable, they're looking at making the communities sustainable. And you can do that yourself too, but that's sort of that's one of those stages you get to as you move along. So the idea is, see where you fit now, think about where you want to go. The first steps in putting together a sustainability program, see what your competitors are doing. Go online, just put in the company name, sustainability, and you'll just find all about what they're doing. You can get some great ideas there. See what your supply chain is doing. So you want to look at the people that you're actually working with. Do they even have a sustainability page? Is this something that's important to them? And then see what you are doing. And compile your policies. Pull together all the policies you have. Your written policies, your unwritten policies, your intended policies, and your unintended policies, because we all have all of those, right? And characterize your operations. And for each company, that's going to be a little bit different, is to look at your operations and kind of characterize what you have. If you have a process, you want to characterize that process and both the energy that you're using, raw materials, water, and so look at your operations. Classify your supply chain. Take a look at your suppliers and see where they fit on that sustainability spectrum. Are they highly sustainable, in the middle, or are they maybe somebody that you're looking at and saying, is this somebody I really want to do business with, okay? And then take a look at your product line. Again, see how sustainable your product is in terms of how it's designed, so that's something you want to look at. And then also, are there some product opportunities out there? The next steps, if you haven't already done this, is to set up a sustainability team. This is really, really helpful. And when you set up a sustainability team, you really want to include people from all aspects of your operation. Now, in some instances, that might be you. No, but And if it is, then I suggest that you actually get some other people to, you know, it could be peers, you know, other people with small companies. But, you know, really it's great to have a team to work on this. But you want somebody with some finance background, and you want somebody maybe from HR, and you want the people for sure that are actually doing the work, because they're the ones that already have a ton of ideas. And it also helps them buy into it, you know, and you'd be amazed at how excited people get to be part of a sustainability program once it gets started. It really gets its own momentum. Then I like to say go with the flow. So instead of designing a sustainability program here, and your operations are over here, you really want to, what are you already doing? So understanding your existing operations, and what I've done is when I'm working in a company and we go and we meet with different people in the company, the first thing I say to people, because when we walk in, they're sitting there saying, I already have a full plate, are you going to tell me I have to do something else? And it's like, no, we came here because we want to find out what you need. You know, what are you doing now? What do you need? And so, you know, when we're talking about the people who are, like when we would talk to facility managers, it's, you know, what do you need? And they started to realize, wow, I can use sustainability to get my maintenance work done. You know, I need a new air conditioner unit, and I can use sustainability to get that. So we try to let them see, hey, you can use this to achieve your objectives. And it was a great way. And by the time we left, it was like, no more problems. So that really worked out well for us. And then you have to look at available resources. You know, it's like you can want to do all these things, but it's going to cost you money, and it's going to take someone's time and effort to put it together and to run it. So look at what you have, figure out where your gaps are, and what you might need. And then expand your way of thinking. Really think outside the box. And I would actually prefer that you just throw away the box and just think, and let people come up with ideas. And before rejecting them or judging them, let people come up with ideas. And you might come up with a wild idea, but sit there and say, okay, if we decided to do that, how could we get there? And that's a really great way to look at things. Start your plan. Set up some guiding principles. And those guiding principles really should come from you and your people. And that's a really great place to get people involved so that you can put together guiding principles everybody can go by. And what's really great about guiding principles is later on, you actually use those to make decisions. So you say, we have 3 choices, and how do each of these stack up against our guiding principles? And it really helps you in making decisions. And then set some short-term and long-term goals. I don't know if I said this, but I have a friend in sustainability, and she says, start small and think big. And that's, I think, what you want to do is your short-term goals, have those be really achievable. Your long-term goals, that's where you can really think big and work towards those. Don't worry too much about how strict these goals are, because you can change them as you go along. You know, you're going to learn, so you can change your goals. I'm going to talk about just some example components here. And first of all, I took a look at this from the standpoint of fashion brands, and I found some really great people online. And just a second. And I was really impressed. You know, I don't work in the fashion industry myself, and when I started researching this, I was really impressed with what's going on in Los Angeles in terms of manufacturing and how sustainable people are. And Five Thread Factory, they have on their website, they have this one page, this is the link to it, 5 crucial questions to answer before choosing your factory. Do you want to go into business with a sweatshop? And you know what they said? Some people do, but if you don't want to, that's something for you to keep in mind. Is the communication excellent? That's a kind of a pretty good question. Can you communicate with, are these people calling you back? Are they responsive? that's how they're going to do business with you, right? Do they understand you? So you have your guiding principles, do their principles kind of align with what, or are they acceptable to you? Does the factory make you proud? I thought that was a great question. And they say, if you took your high school friend in to look at that factory, would you feel proud of what they were seeing? And I thought that was a really good criteria. And then, do you know where your product is? And by that, it was, are they going to be making the product there? Or are they going to make it someplace else that you haven't seen? So I liked that. I thought that was good. And then Indie Source. You know, when American Apparel shut down their manufacturing operations, Indie Source was very concerned, and they started hiring, and they felt that if every brand in LA looked at doing more manufacturing here in Los Angeles, we could actually absorb those jobs. And I just thought that was a great way to look at it. And what they said then was, we're asking U.S. fashion brands to send us their overseas garments, and we'll show them how to produce here while saving a ton of American jobs in the process. So I really like that. So that's about making it in America. Yeah, there are a lot of other benefits to making it close. Resilience is a really good example. How many times prior to the holidays have there been problems at the ports and you're sunk because you're waiting for shipments from overseas? So I think there are a lot of advantages to doing things close. In Europe, one of the things that happened when the cost of manufacturing in Eastern Europe came within 30% of the cost of manufacturing in Western Europe, the manufacturers in Western Europe started bringing manufacturing back to Western Europe. So that was a 30% cost differential, but it was worth it to them. So when you're looking at whether you are going to manufacture overseas or you manufacture here in California, think about all of your costs. That's really important. And because it's not just the manufacturing cost, it's the shipping cost, it's the risk cost, it's how many man hours in your organization are spent managing that operation overseas? What kind of quality issues are you dealing with? How much product do you end up wasting? Just keeping in mind all of those things when you're considering that. And when you make it in America, you save a lot of greenhouse gases. Not just because they do a lot of things with coal energy overseas, but also shipping it across the ocean. And if you are going to engage suppliers that are overseas, then set up a policy, some policy and practices for your supply chain. And again, I recommend that you go online and take a look at what some other people are doing. And I did that. I went and looked at what other companies were doing and what they had put in. And basically, they had policies about how they were doing things. And these are some of the basic components that were in their policies. They had a section that was on labor standards and workplace safety. And a lot of that is really basic, but it's child labor, it's just some really basic things that we take for granted here in the United States, and about making sure that that's part of what somebody else is actually considering as part of their business overseas. And protecting the environment. Even though regulations aren't as stringent overseas, there's a certain environmental standard that we each should be looking at and saying, this is the environmental standard that I want to make sure whoever I do work with is following. That's very important. And transparency is, are they making it where they say they're going to make it and the way they're going to make it, or are they outsourcing it? And then screening. So setting up some criteria of how you're going to screen suppliers and then continue to monitor them to make sure that they're meeting your criteria. So, product sustainability, this, for all of us, just looking at our products and seeing how sustainable our products, this is a good area to look at how we can improve our sustainability. In the fashion industry, they're looking at sustainable cotton, reusing fabrics, and Gap has come up with a waterless dye. In other industries, like Califia, you know, I think how you grow your product, the fact that you have no GMOs, you're taking a look at these things and saying, I want, that not only do you want to have a sustainable process, but you want to have a sustainable product. So you really want to kind of take a look at the product you have and see how sustainable your product is. And this next one, okay, this is about assessment and analysis. This looks complicated. I'll explain it. It's not too complicated. But the point I wanted to make here is how important analysis is. What we think is going on is not always what's actually going on. So many times I've walked into a manufacturing plant, and the first thing I do is I sit down with the managers and I say, okay, so explain your operations to me. So they explain their operations to me. Then the next thing we do is we go out and we do this site walk, and we go through their manufacturing plant. And so we'll go through the manufacturing plant, and I will ask the people on the floor what they're doing, and how do you do that one, how do you do this? And the manager that is walking the floor with me is, I didn't know we did that. Oh, I didn't know we did it that way. And you know, I've had people tell me that they do things exactly the opposite way the person in the office told me it was being done. And this is why it's important to go and do the analysis. A lot of people don't want to pay for analysis, but you know, it costs this much and it can save you this much, and it's really worth it. So in this situation, we were meeting with a facilities manager, and we had analyzed their energy use. There are 3 periods of energy use here. And these two are during the peak hours, which basically are the hours that you're at work. And this green one is the base period. And that, for this office building, that's basically the hours that no one's there. And you can see that the energy use when no one's there is pretty close to the energy use when people are there. So the facilities manager said, oh, I don't need to see that. We explained it to him, and he said, oh, wait a minute, I'd like to see that. And all of a sudden he became interested. But so you might look at this and say, okay, if I wanted to save energy, or even not knowing this, you'd say, okay, if I want to save energy, I need to look at, say, my air conditioning settings during the day, right? And you might think, I'm going to back off on my energy settings during the day. Well, you could do that, but the fact of the matter is there are a lot more hours when you're not working than when you are working. So here's how much actual energy, this was the average hourly use. Here's how much actual energy they're using when no one's there. So now you look at that and you say, oh, I should really be spending my time on when nobody's there. You know, I'll worry about air conditioning when everybody's working after I figure out how I'm going to turn out the lights and turn off the air conditioning at night when nobody's there. So that's the importance of analysis, is understanding your systems. And when you do, you get these wonderful pictures. I love data. And you get these wonderful pictures. And again, the solutions just pop right out at you. So these are just, so I'm not going to go through all the components in detail. Here's some other important components to your sustainability plan. Your program is putting together then, once you've looked at everything, putting together an implementation plan and timeline. And your implementation plan can include steps like further analysis. Okay, so you don't have to do all your analysis up front. You can lay out the different types of analysis you want to do as part of your plan. Set up a plan and timeline that you can do. This is not about having a document that looks great and makes you look wonderful. This is about having a document that really guides you in what you're going to do. Next thing is you have to make a commitment of resources and budget. And when you reach this step, you may go back and stretch your timeline a little bit if you find you don't have the resources and budget. Another thing that's really good to do is to look at setting up a revolving sustainability fund. So you say, okay, we're going to do this first, and that's going to save us money. We're going to take the savings from that. We'll put this into our sustainability fund, and we will use that to pay for the next thing. And then we'll take the savings from that, and you're still going to be accruing savings from the first thing you did. And so you use a portion of the savings to finance your additional sustainability steps. And then the final thing is making sure you have some metrics. Those are your goals of how you want to get there. And you usually do those, when you're doing those, you do those in terms of per unit of production or per dollar of product, whatever. But you want to tie it to production so that as you grow, you know, a good example is, say, your energy use per unit of production. As your production goes up, then you're comparing apples to apples. So those are your metrics, and then you want to set up measurement and monitoring systems. And finally, once you've implemented your program, make sure you advertise it and communicate it to the public, because guess what? A lot of other people are going to be coming to your website to see how sustainable you are. And you know, companies, major corporations today want to do business with people who are sustainable themselves. So in addition to you looking at your supply chain, other people may be looking at you as part of their supply chain. And this is Patagonia and Califia. And that's what I have.